Now, this topic deals with demand and supply, and it's probably among the most memorable topics after this course is done. So, at least most people even just remember the phrase of demand and supply. This is probably the more difficult chapter before the exam. It kind of represents the culmination of the first part of this course, and it deals with the end goal of this topic is that you have an understanding of how a market is formed. So with an understanding of how a market is formed, you need two parts to have a market, a demand side and a supply side. With the end result, you get two key pieces of information. You get the equilibrium price and you get the equilibrium quantity. So that's the end goal in this topic, is being able to calculate and graphically see an equilibrium price and an equilibrium quantity. Because the beauty of economics and even the beauty of a market economy is that no one tells us what the price is. The price is given to us by the market. There's no such thing as too high of a price or too low of a price. Prices are what they are. That's what the market will bear. And so that's what this topic does, is it lays the groundwork then for how is a market constructed and what are the forces within a market. There's demand side forces and there's supply side forces, which is in really how your study of this topic is organized. So you'll notice that there are a lot of videos with this topic. And that's because we need to define demand, then we need to define supply, then we need to show how equilibrium price and quantity are occurring. Then we need to talk about how things change, how you can move along the curve and shift the curve, how you can move along the supply curve and you can shift the supply curve, and that it then causes changes in the price and the quantity. It allows you to make predictions. And so that's what this topic then outlines, right? There's kind of a detailed discussion then of how demand is determined, then a detailed discussion of how price is determined with the same axis, price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis, and then putting them together here, with the equilibrium price being the point where the two meet together on the y-axis, and the equilibrium quantity being where the two curves meet on the x-axis. And the beauty of economics and the beauty of markets is that these disequilibrium positions, such as a price being too low or a price being too high, are only temporary. And no one has to tell them you got the price wrong. The price adjusts because a surplus exists. And the price adjusts because a shortage exists. Because a shortage exists, there's upward pressure on the price. And because a surplus exists, there's a downward pressure on the price until we get to the equilibrium. And that's then where this topic then takes from that a discussion then of what happens when you shift the curve. Why would a curve shift and what happens to the equilibrium? So, right, there's all these factors here that can cause the demand curve to shift, which you would be looking at. But the idea here, and you'll obviously read this and look at this and think how great this is. But what you could see here is that if I have something where the supply curve shifts to the right, increases, you'll notice here that the equilibrium price falls and the equilibrium quantity rises. Your value as an economist would be in being able to predict that that would happen based on whatever event it was that caused the supply curve to shift. Businesses would want to know that in the future the equilibrium price is going to fall, because then they can make their appropriate inventory adjustments. Here there's a graph where the demand curve shifts to the left, decreases. No, that's fine and all, but the more exciting parts then too are when both curves are shifting. And then what matters is how much they shift relative to each other. For instance, is demand shifting more than supply? Is supply shifting more than demand? Or are they both shifting the same amount? And then this chapter kind of finishes up the discussion by talking about what happens if we try to make the price something other than the equilibrium price, meaning that we try to impose a price floor and a price ceiling, that it generally is good from a society and ethical perspective, but it does cause problems in the operation of the market. So if anything, this topic, as you learn about demand and supply, becomes a celebration of why markets are good things for economists and why most economists believe in free markets. But the value, again, of a free market is that it does give you an equilibrium price and quantity, and that there is no such thing then as surpluses and shortages that persist over the long run.